Question 1. Examination of the data shows that a customer has reported an issue with a recent purchase, and resolving it may require accessing their transaction history. You are aware of the company's strict data protection policy and the UK GDPR. Which of the following actions best demonstrates professional conduct and compliance? Option A. Inform the customer that their data cannot be accessed due to privacy concerns, even if it means the issue cannot be resolved. Option B. Seek explicit authorization from your line manager to access the specific customer's transaction history, clearly stating the business reason for the access. Option C. Access the customer's transaction history directly to investigate and resolve the issue promptly, assuming the intention is to help. Option D. Share the customer's personal details with a colleague in another department to see if they can access the information more easily. The correct answer is C. Access the customer's transaction history directly to investigate and resolve the issue promptly, assuming the intention is to help. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations regarding customer data privacy. Sainsbury, as a retailer, handles a significant amount of customer data, and its employees are bound by strict data protection laws and internal policies. The challenge lies in discerning when and how to access or use this data appropriately, ensuring that any action taken is for a legitimate business purpose and does not infringe upon customer privacy rights or breach data protection regulations. Careful judgment is required to avoid unauthorized access or misuse, which could lead to severe reputational damage, legal penalties, and loss of customer trust. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to the Sainsbury data protection policy and relevant UK legislation, such as the Data Protection Act 2018 and the UK GDPR. This approach involves seeking explicit authorization from a line manager for any access to customer data, ensuring that the request is for a legitimate business purpose and that the access is limited to the minimum necessary information. This aligns with the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and accountability, which are fundamental to lawful and ethical data handling. By following this process, the employee demonstrates integrity, respects customer privacy, and upholds the company's commitment to data security and compliance. An incorrect approach that involves accessing customer data without authorization, even with the intention of resolving a customer issue quickly, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action breaches the Data Protection Act 2018 and the UK GDPR by potentially accessing personal data without a lawful basis or consent, and it violates the Sainsbury data protection policy. Such unauthorized access can be construed as a data breach, leading to potential fines under the Information Commissioner's Office (ICO) regulations. Ethically, it erodes customer trust and demonstrates a disregard for their privacy rights. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the request for customer data because of a general fear of breaching privacy, is also professionally unacceptable. While caution is necessary, a complete refusal to access data when it is legitimately required for a business purpose, such as resolving a customer complaint or investigating a potential fraud, can lead to poor customer service and operational inefficiencies. This approach fails to balance privacy concerns with the need to conduct business effectively and responsibly. It suggests a lack of understanding of the nuances of data protection law, which allows for data processing under specific lawful bases and for legitimate purposes, provided appropriate safeguards are in place. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the company's data protection policies and relevant legislation. When faced with a request for customer data, an employee should first assess the legitimacy of the request and the purpose for which the data is needed. If the purpose is legitimate and aligns with business operations, the employee should then determine if they have the necessary authorization to access the data. If authorization is required, they should follow the established procedure, which typically involves seeking approval from their line manager or a designated data protection officer. If there is any doubt about the legality or ethicality of accessing the data, the employee should err on the side of caution and seek guidance from their manager or the relevant compliance department before proceeding. This structured approach ensures that data is handled responsibly, legally, and ethically, protecting both the customer and the organization. Question 2. Performance analysis shows that a proposed change to in-store staffing levels could significantly reduce operational costs. However, there are concerns that this might lead to longer customer wait times and a reduction in personalized assistance. Which of the following approaches best addresses the potential implications of this change? Option A. Proceed with the staffing reduction immediately to realize the projected cost saving, assuming customers will adapt to any minor inconveniences. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the effect on customer experience across different demographics, assesses potential regulatory compliance issues under UK consumer law, and identifies mitigation strategies for any negative consequences. Option C. Focus solely on the financial benefits of the staffing reduction, as cost efficiency is the primary driver for operational improvements. Option D. Implement the staffing reduction and monitor customer feedback only after the changes have been made, addressing issues as they arise. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the effect on customer experience across different demographics, assesses potential regulatory compliance issues under UK consumer law, and identifies mitigation strategies for any negative consequences. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of how operational changes can impact customer experience and potentially breach regulatory expectations around service delivery and fairness. Sainsbury, as a major retailer, has a responsibility to ensure that its operational decisions, even those aimed at efficiency, do not disproportionately disadvantage certain customer groups or lead to a decline in service quality that could be deemed unfair or misleading under consumer protection laws. The challenge lies in balancing the pursuit of operational improvements with the imperative to maintain customer trust and adhere to legal and ethical standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a thorough impact assessment that considers the potential effects on various customer segments, including vulnerable customers, and evaluates compliance with relevant UK consumer protection legislation, such as the Consumer Rights Act 2015, which implies terms about goods and services being of satisfactory quality, fit for purpose, and as described. This approach demonstrates best professional practice by proactively identifying risks, ensuring fairness, and upholding legal obligations. It aligns with ethical principles of customer welfare and responsible business conduct, ensuring that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of customer detriment or regulatory noncompliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing changes solely based on projected cost savings without assessing the impact on customer service quality or potential regulatory breaches is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach risks violating consumer protection laws by potentially offering services that are not of satisfactory quality or are not as described, leading to customer dissatisfaction and potential legal challenges. It also fails to consider the ethical obligation to treat customers fairly, particularly vulnerable individuals, who might be more severely affected by reduced service levels. Focusing on immediate operational efficiency gains without considering the broader implications for customer experience or regulatory adherence is another failure. This narrow focus can lead to unintended consequences, such as increased customer complaints, damage to brand reputation, and potential breaches of implied terms under consumer law regarding the provision of services. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the customer-centric principles expected of a responsible retailer. Ignoring potential negative impacts on specific customer groups, such as those with mobility issues or those who rely on specific service elements, represents a failure to uphold principles of fairness and inclusivity. This can lead to discriminatory outcomes, even if unintentional, and may contravene equality legislation and ethical expectations of corporate social responsibility. It also risks alienating a significant portion of the customer base, impacting long-term loyalty and profitability. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should adopt a structured decision-making process that prioritizes a comprehensive impact assessment. This involves 1. Identifying the proposed operational change and its intended benefits. 2. Mapping out all potential stakeholders with a particular focus on customer segments. 3. Analyzing the potential positive and negative impacts of the change on each stakeholder group, considering service quality, accessibility, and fairness. 4. Evaluating the proposed changes against relevant UK legislation, including consumer protection laws and any specific retail regulations. 5. Considering ethical implications, such as the impact on vulnerable customers and the company's commitment to fair treatment. 6. Developing mitigation strategies for any identified negative impacts or regulatory risks. 7. Making a decision based on a holistic understanding of the benefits, risks, and compliance requirements, ensuring that customer welfare and regulatory adherence are paramount. Question 3. System analysis indicates that the current process for restocking shelves in a busy Sainsbury's supermarket is experiencing delays, leading to out-of-stock items during peak hours. To address this, a store manager is considering various strategies to optimize this process. Which of the following approaches would best align with a principle of effective and sustainable process optimization within a retail environment? Option A. Introducing a new, more complex shelving system that requires significant retraining without first assessing its impact on the speed of restocking. Option B. Conducting a thorough observation and data collection of the current restocking workflow, interviewing staff involved, and then collaboratively developing and piloting potential improvements. Option C. Relying on the personal experience of senior staff to dictate changes to the restocking schedule and product placement without further investigation. Option D. Implementing a new automated inventory management system immediately, assuming it will resolve all restocking issues. The correct answer is D. Implementing a new automated inventory management system immediately, assuming it will resolve all restocking issues. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in retail operations, identifying and implementing improvements to existing processes to enhance efficiency and customer experience. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for change with the potential disruption it can cause, and ensuring that any proposed optimization aligns with Sainsbury operational standards and customer service ethos. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both effective and sustainable. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a data-driven and collaborative method. By first understanding the current state through detailed observation and data collection, and then involving the frontline staff who execute the process daily, it ensures that proposed changes are practical, address real issues, and are more likely to be adopted. This aligns with principles of continuous improvement and employee engagement, fostering a culture of ownership and innovation. It also implicitly adheres to Sainsbury's commitment to operational excellence and customer satisfaction by seeking to improve the underlying mechanisms that deliver these. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on implementing a new technology without understanding the existing workflow or consulting staff would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a solution that is incompatible with current practices, creates new bottlenecks, or is met with resistance from employees, ultimately failing to achieve the desired optimization and potentially harming morale and productivity. This approach risks violating ethical considerations of fair treatment of employees and professional responsibility to implement effective solutions. Another incorrect approach, such as making changes based on anecdotal evidence or personal opinion without systematic analysis, is also professionally unsound. This lacks the rigor required for effective process optimization and can lead to misguided changes that do not address the root cause of inefficiencies, or worse, create new problems. This demonstrates a failure in professional due diligence and a lack of commitment to evidence-based decision-making. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a structured approach. 1. Define the problem or opportunity for improvement. 2. Gather comprehensive data on the current process, observation, interviews, metrics. 3. Analyze the data to identify root causes and areas for improvement. 4. Brainstorm potential solutions involving stakeholders. 5. Evaluate and select the most viable solutions based on feasibility, impact, and alignment with organizational goals. 6. Plan and implement the chosen solution, including training and communication. 7. Monitor the results and make further adjustments as needed. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, effective, and ethically sound, leading to sustainable improvements. Question 4. Analysis of the current point of sale (POS) system vulnerabilities at a Sainsbury's store reveals a potential for unauthorized access to customer payment data. Which of the following approaches to addressing this risk is most aligned with best professional practice and regulatory requirements? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify specific vulnerabilities, analyze their potential impact and likelihood, and develop a prioritized plan for implementing appropriate technical and organizational security measures. Option B. Immediately invest in the most expensive security software available to broadly protect against all potential cyber threats, without a detailed analysis of the specific risks faced by the POS system. Option C. Postpone critical security updates to the POS system to avoid any disruption to customer checkout processes. Assuming the risk of a breach is low. Option D. Rely on informal feedback from store staff regarding system performance and occasional security alerts to guide decisions on security updates and patches. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify specific vulnerabilities, analyze their potential impact and likelihood, and develop a prioritized plan for implementing appropriate technical and organizational security measures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a nuanced understanding of risk assessment in a retail environment, specifically concerning potential data breaches. The challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security measures with operational efficiency and customer experience. A thorough risk assessment must identify, analyze, and evaluate potential threats to sensitive customer data, considering both the likelihood of an event and its potential impact. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic and documented process of identifying potential vulnerabilities in the point-of-sale POS systems and associated data handling procedures. This includes considering both technical vulnerabilities, e.g., unpatched software, weak access controls, and human factors, e.g., employee training, social engineering risks. By prioritizing risks based on their potential impact and likelihood, and then developing proportionate mitigation strategies, Sainsbury can effectively manage its data security obligations under relevant UK data protection legislation, such as the Data Protection Act 2018 and the UK GDPR. This proactive approach aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, ensuring that privacy and security are embedded into systems and processes from the outset. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the cost of implementing new security software without a prior risk assessment is professionally unacceptable. This fails to identify specific threats and vulnerabilities, leading to potentially ineffective or unnecessary expenditure. It also risks overlooking critical risks that might not be addressed by the chosen software. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to comply with the regulatory requirement to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. Another incorrect approach, which involves relying solely on anecdotal evidence from staff about system performance without formal investigation, is also professionally flawed. This approach is subjective and lacks the objective data required for a credible risk assessment. It fails to identify systemic issues or emerging threats, potentially leaving customer data exposed. This disregard for a structured assessment process can lead to regulatory noncompliance and reputational damage. Finally, an approach that prioritizes the convenience of staff over the security of customer data by delaying necessary security updates due to perceived operational disruption is ethically and regulatorily unsound. This demonstrates a failure to uphold the duty of care owed to customers regarding their personal data. It directly contravenes the principles of data minimization and integrity, and the requirement to implement security measures that are proportionate to the risk. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This typically includes 1. Risk identification, systematically identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities. 2. Risk analysis, assessing the likelihood and impact of identified risks. 3. Risk evaluation, prioritizing risks based on their significance. 4. Risk treatment, developing and implementing strategies to mitigate, transfer, accept, or avoid risks. 5. Monitoring and review, regularly reviewing the effectiveness of risk treatments and updating the assessment as circumstances change. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are evidence-based, compliant with regulations, and aligned with the organization's objectives and ethical responsibilities. Question 5. The performance metrics show a significant and sudden drop in customer satisfaction scores in a specific department, coinciding with a new stock management system implementation. The department manager is under pressure to quickly improve these scores to meet quarterly targets. Which of the following actions demonstrates the most responsible and effective approach to addressing this situation? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the new stock management system's impact on staff workflow and customer service. Gather feedback from both staff and customers, and identify specific areas for adjustment before implementing any changes. Option B. Implement a series of mandatory intensive customer service training sessions for all staff in the department, assuming the drop in scores is due to staff performance. Option C. Make significant, immediate adjustments to staff rotas and responsibilities within the department to try and compensate for the perceived performance dip, without a detailed analysis of the cause. Option D. Immediately revert to the old stock management system to restore customer satisfaction, and postpone the investigation into the new system's issues until after the current targets are met. Correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the new stock management system's impact on staff workflow and customer service, gather feedback from both staff and customers, and identify specific areas for adjustment before implementing any changes. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term ethical considerations and regulatory compliance. The pressure to meet targets can lead to shortcuts that compromise integrity. Careful judgment is required to identify and mitigate potential risks to both the business and its customers. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, evidence-based investigation before making a decision. This aligns with the principles of fairness, due diligence, and accountability expected in a professional environment. It ensures that any action taken is justified, proportionate, and compliant with Sainsbury internal policies and relevant UK regulations, such as those pertaining to consumer protection and fair trading. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of unfair or discriminatory practices and upholds the company's reputation. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost savings without considering the underlying cause of the performance dip is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a superficial fix that doesn't address the root problem, potentially resulting in recurring issues and further financial losses. Ethically, it fails to acknowledge the impact on staff who might be unfairly blamed or subjected to unnecessary performance management. It also risks violating employment law if disciplinary actions are taken without proper investigation. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing immediate, drastic changes to staff rotas based on incomplete data is also professionally unsound. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and can lead to operational chaos, decreased staff morale, and potential breaches of employment contracts or working time regulations. It prioritizes expediency over fairness and proper process, creating a high risk of employee grievances and legal challenges. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the problem, gathering all relevant data, both quantitative and qualitative, analyzing the root causes, evaluating potential solutions against ethical and regulatory standards, and then implementing and monitoring the chosen course of action. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with best practices. Question 6. The control framework reveals a proposed change to product labeling that could potentially lead to customer confusion regarding product ingredients, although the immediate financial benefit of the change is clear, and the risk of direct financial loss from the change itself is not immediately quantifiable. A team member raises a concern about the potential for customer dissatisfaction and reputational damage. What is the most appropriate stakeholder-centric approach to address this situation? Option A. Escalate the concern to senior management, highlighting the potential for customer dissatisfaction and reputational risk, and recommend a pause until further clarification is obtained. Option B. Immediately halt the labeling change and initiate a comprehensive review of all potential customer impacts, involving customer service and marketing departments. Option C. Proceed with the labeling change as planned, focusing on the immediate financial benefits and assuming customers will adapt. Option D. Document the concern internally but proceed with the labeling change, as the risk is not yet financially quantifiable and the immediate benefit is certain. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the labeling change as planned, focusing on the immediate financial benefits and assuming customers will adapt. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate financial pressures of a business with its long-term ethical and regulatory obligations to its stakeholders. The pressure to meet short-term targets can tempt individuals to overlook or downplay potential risks, especially if those risks are not immediately apparent or quantifiable. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions are not solely driven by immediate financial gain, but also consider the broader impact on all stakeholders and adherence to the Sainsbury's control framework, which implicitly aligns with UK regulatory expectations for corporate governance and consumer protection. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes transparency and proactive risk management, aligning with the principles of good corporate governance and the spirit of regulations like the UK Corporate Governance Code and consumer protection laws. By engaging with the relevant department and seeking clarification on potential impacts, the individual demonstrates a commitment to understanding the full implications of the proposed change. This proactive stance ensures that any decision made is informed by a comprehensive understanding of potential risks to customers, employees, and the company's reputation, thereby upholding ethical standards and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the change without further investigation would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could breach consumer protection legislation by potentially misleading customers or exposing them to unforeseen risks. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the well-being of customers and a failure to uphold the company's duty of care. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the concern due to the lack of immediate quantifiable financial impact, is also a failure. This overlooks the potential for reputational damage and future regulatory scrutiny, which can have substantial, albeit less immediate, financial consequences. It also fails to acknowledge the qualitative impact on customer trust and loyalty, which are crucial for long-term business sustainability. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, identify the potential issue and its implications for all stakeholders. Second, seek to understand the full context and potential risks, engaging with relevant departments or experts. Third, evaluate the proposed action against the company's internal control framework, ethical guidelines, and relevant external regulations. Fourth, if significant risks are identified, escalate the concern and advocate for a more responsible course of action, prioritizing long-term sustainability and stakeholder well-being over short-term gains. Question 7. Research into best practices for handling customer data requests within a retail environment. A new team member receives a request from a colleague to access a customer's purchase history to verify a product return. The team member is unsure if they have the authority to access this information directly or if specific procedures must be followed. Option A. Inform the colleague that customer data cannot be accessed due to privacy concerns and decline to assist. Option B. Search internal company documentation for general guidelines on data access without seeking specific clarification for this particular request. Option C. Consult with a supervisor or manager to clarify the correct procedure for accessing customer purchase history and confirm authorization levels before proceeding. Option D. Directly access the customer's purchase history to assist the colleague quickly, assuming the request is legitimate and for a business purpose. The correct answer is C. Consult with a supervisor or manager to clarify the correct procedure for accessing customer purchase history and confirm authorization levels before proceeding. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect customer data. Sainsbury operates within a strict regulatory environment, particularly concerning data privacy under UK law e.g. Data Protection Act 2018, GDPR principles. The challenge lies in discerning when and how to access information that might be sensitive, ensuring that such access is justified, proportionate, and compliant with internal policies and external regulations. Careful judgment is required to avoid any actions that could be construed as unauthorized access or misuse of personal data, which could lead to significant reputational damage, financial penalties, and loss of customer trust. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to data protection principles and internal governance. By seeking clarification from a supervisor and referencing established data handling policies, the individual demonstrates a commitment to responsible data management. This aligns with the ethical imperative to respect customer privacy and the legal requirement to process personal data lawfully, fairly, and transparently. It ensures that any access to information is authorized, necessary for a legitimate business purpose, and conducted in a manner that minimizes risk. This proactive and compliant stance is crucial for maintaining the integrity of Sainsbury operations and its relationship with customers. An incorrect approach that involves directly accessing the customer's personal details without explicit authorization or a clear, documented business need would constitute a regulatory and ethical failure. This could breach the Data Protection Act 2018 by violating principles of lawful processing and data minimization. It also fails to uphold the ethical duty of care towards customer information. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the request due to fear of breaching policy, would be a failure in customer service and potentially a missed opportunity to address a genuine business need, demonstrating a lack of proactive problem solving and an overly cautious, rather than judicious, approach to data handling. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear assessment of the request's legitimacy and the nature of the information sought. If there is any ambiguity or potential for data privacy concerns, the first step should always be to consult with a supervisor or a designated data protection officer. This should be followed by a thorough review of relevant company policies and data protection regulations. The decision should then be based on whether the access is necessary, proportionate, authorized, and conducted in a way that safeguards customer data. If the request cannot be fulfilled compliantly, alternative, compliant solutions should be explored. Question 8. The risk matrix shows a moderate risk of data breach if customer personal details are shared without proper verification. A long-standing customer, who you know personally and trust, calls requesting their account balance and recent transaction history over the phone, stating they are unable to access their online account due to a forgotten password and are in urgent need of this information for a bill payment. They are asking you to bypass the usual security questions and provide the information directly. Option A. Provide the customer with their account balance and recent transaction history, explaining that you are making an exception due to their long-standing relationship and the urgency of their request. Option B. Politely explain that while you understand their urgency, company policy and data protection regulations require you to follow the standard security verification process to protect their account. Offer to guide them through the password reset process or escalate their request to a supervisor who can assist with alternative verification methods if available. Option C. Access the customer's account and provide the requested information, assuming that since they are a known customer and in a hurry, it is safe to do so. Option D. Inform the customer that you cannot help them over the phone and suggest they visit a branch in person to resolve their password issue and access their information. The correct answer is B. Politely explain that while you understand their urgency, company policy and data protection regulations require you to follow the standard security verification process to protect their account. Offer to guide them through the password reset process or escalate their request to a supervisor who can assist with alternative verification methods if available. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it pits a desire to achieve a positive outcome for a customer against the established ethical and regulatory obligation to maintain data privacy and security. The conflict arises from the temptation to bypass standard procedures, which could lead to a breach of trust and potential regulatory penalties. Careful judgment is required to balance customer service with adherence to company policy and data protection laws. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data security and regulatory compliance. By escalating the request to the appropriate department, the employee upholds the company's commitment to protecting customer information, as mandated by data protection regulations. This demonstrates integrity and a commitment to ethical conduct, which are fundamental to maintaining customer trust and the company's reputation. It also ensures that any access to sensitive data is handled through secure, authorized channels, minimizing the risk of unauthorized disclosure. An incorrect approach that involves directly providing the customer with the requested information without proper authorization would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action would violate data protection principles, potentially leading to breaches of privacy laws and company policy. It demonstrates a disregard for established security protocols and could expose the company to legal repercussions, fines, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, such as fabricating information or making assumptions about the data, would also be ethically unsound and could lead to misinformation and further complications, undermining the integrity of the service provided. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core ethical and regulatory obligations. This involves understanding company policies, relevant laws, such as the Data Protection Act in the UK, and the principles of customer service. When faced with a conflict, the next step is to assess the risks associated with each potential course of action. Prioritizing compliance and security, even if it means a slight delay in customer service, is generally the most responsible path. Escalation to a supervisor or a specialized department is a key strategy when unsure, or when a request falls outside of one's immediate authority or knowledge, ensuring that the situation is handled by those best equipped to do so within the established framework. Question 9. Process analysis reveals a customer at Sainsbury's checkout is attempting to use a voucher that has technically expired by one day. The voucher is for a small discount on a specific product. The till system flags the voucher as invalid due to the expiry date. The customer expresses disappointment, explaining they had forgotten about the voucher until now. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Sainsbury employee? Option A. Politely explain that the voucher is expired and therefore cannot be accepted, adhering strictly to the system's notification. Option B. Suggest the customer return another day with a valid voucher to receive the discount. Option C. Immediately accept the voucher and override the system, as the expiry is only by one day and the customer is disappointed. Option D. Politely explain that the voucher is expired, but offer to check with a supervisor if there is any flexibility, or if a similar offer can be made to maintain customer goodwill. Correct answer is A. Politely explain that the voucher is expired and therefore cannot be accepted, adhering strictly to the system's notification. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a Sainsbury employee to make a decision that could impact customer trust and the company's reputation, even if the immediate financial implications are minor. The core of the challenge lies in balancing adherence to company policy with a pragmatic understanding of customer experience and potential for escalation. Careful judgment is required to avoid both overly rigid application of rules and a lax approach that could set undesirable precedents. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes customer satisfaction and problem resolution within established guidelines. By seeking clarification and offering a solution that aligns with the spirit of the policy, the employee demonstrates good judgment, customer focus, and an understanding of Sainsbury's commitment to service. This proactive and empathetic response builds customer loyalty and reinforces Sainsbury brand values. An incorrect approach that involves strictly refusing the customer's request without further consideration fails to acknowledge the potential for minor deviations to significantly impact customer perception. This rigid adherence to policy, without exploring reasonable exceptions or seeking guidance, can lead to customer dissatisfaction and negative word of mouth, potentially damaging the brand. It also misses an opportunity to demonstrate flexibility and customer care. Another incorrect approach, which is to immediately grant the customer's request without any verification or consideration of policy, represents a failure in due diligence and could set a precedent for future policy abuse. While seemingly customer-friendly in the short term, it undermines the integrity of company policies and could lead to financial losses or operational inefficiencies if widely adopted. It also bypasses the established decision-making framework designed to ensure fairness and consistency. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that involves understanding the relevant company policies, assessing the specific situation and its potential impact, considering the customer's perspective, and seeking clarification or guidance when ambiguity exists. This framework emphasizes problem-solving, customer centricity, and adherence to ethical principles and company guidelines. Question 10. Which approach would be most appropriate for Sainsbury's to consider when reviewing its existing risk assessment processes with the aim of improving efficiency without compromising effectiveness? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of current risk assessment methodologies, seeking data on their effectiveness and identifying areas for optimization that maintain robust risk identification and mitigation. Option B. Immediately reduce the frequency of certain risk assessments to achieve cost savings, assuming current processes are overly burdensome. Option C. Delegate the entire review process to an external consultancy without providing clear objectives or oversight. Option D. Implement changes to risk assessment procedures based on informal feedback from a small group of managers. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of current risk assessment methodologies, seeking data on their effectiveness and identifying areas for optimization that maintain robust risk identification and mitigation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for cost reduction with the long-term implications for customer safety and regulatory compliance. A hasty decision to cut corners on risk assessment processes could lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and most importantly, harm to customers. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any changes to risk assessment procedures are robust, evidence-based, and do not compromise the company's duty of care. The correct approach, focusing on a comprehensive review of existing risk assessment methodologies and their effectiveness, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of good governance and responsible business conduct expected within the UK regulatory framework, particularly as it relates to consumer protection and operational integrity. It demonstrates a commitment to understanding the root causes of any perceived inefficiencies and implementing solutions that are sustainable and compliant. This proactive and thorough method ensures that risk mitigation strategies remain fit for purpose and adequately address potential threats to the business and its customers. An approach that prioritizes immediate cost savings by reducing the frequency or scope of risk assessments without a data-driven justification would be professionally unacceptable. This would likely contravene the spirit, if not the letter, of regulations requiring businesses to maintain adequate systems and controls to manage risks effectively. Such an approach could be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence and a disregard for the potential consequences of inadequate risk management, potentially leading to breaches of consumer protection laws and industry-specific guidelines. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few individuals when deciding on changes to risk assessment processes. This lacks the objectivity and rigor required for sound decision-making and could lead to the overlooking of critical risks. It fails to meet the professional standard of evidence-based practice and could expose the company to regulatory scrutiny for failing to implement a systematic and defensible approach to risk management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured evaluation of the current state, identification of desired outcomes, and the development of a plan to achieve those outcomes. This includes gathering data, consulting with relevant stakeholders, including those with expertise in risk management and compliance, and assessing the potential impact of any proposed changes. A robust framework for decision-making would involve a clear understanding of the regulatory landscape, ethical considerations, and the potential consequences of different courses of action, ensuring that decisions are both effective and responsible. Question 11. The review process indicates a customer's personal details have been accessed by an employee outside of their usual job function, triggering an automated security alert. The employee in question has a history of minor policy infractions, but no prior data security breaches. The alert does not specify the exact nature of the access, only that it occurred. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the line manager receiving this alert? Option A. Contact the employee directly to ask them why they accessed the customer's details, explaining that their actions have triggered a security alert. Option B. Ignore the alert as it is automated and the employee has no prior serious data security issues, assuming it is a system error or a minor justifiable access. Option C. Immediately escalate the alert to the data protection officer and the IT security team, providing them with the employee's details and the alert information for their investigation, while ensuring the employee is not informed at this stage to prevent potential data tampering. Option D. Share the customer's name and the employee's name with other team members to discuss potential reasons for the access and to gauge their opinions on the situation. The correct answer is C. Immediately escalate the alert to the data protection officer and the IT security team, providing them with the employee's details and the alert information for their investigation, while ensuring the employee is not informed at this stage to prevent potential data tampering. Explanation. The review process indicates a potential breach of data protection regulations, specifically concerning the handling of customer information. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need to investigate a potential issue with the obligation to protect customer privacy and comply with legal requirements. A careful judgment is needed to determine the appropriate course of action without causing undue alarm or violating established protocols. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to the Sainsbury's data protection policy and relevant UK legislation, such as the Data Protection Act 2018 and the UK GDPR. This involves a structured, documented investigation that respects customer confidentiality and ensures that any data accessed is done so with legitimate business reasons and appropriate authorization. This aligns with the ethical duty of care towards customers and the legal obligation to safeguard personal data. An incorrect approach that involves immediately sharing the customer's details with a wider group without a clear, documented need or authorization would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could constitute an unlawful disclosure of personal data, violating the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation under the UK GDPR. It would also breach the internal Sainsbury's data protection policy, potentially leading to disciplinary action and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the alert due to perceived minor nature, be a failure to uphold due diligence and could lead to a more serious data breach going undetected, also contravening regulatory obligations to protect data. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the nature of the alert and its potential implications. This should be followed by consulting relevant internal policies and procedures, such as the data protection policy. If the situation warrants further investigation, it should be escalated to the appropriate internal authority, e.g., Data Protection Officer or IT security team, with all relevant details documented. Any actions taken must be proportionate, necessary, and compliant with legal and ethical standards, always with a focus on protecting customer data and maintaining trust. Question 12. The analysis reveals that a customer has requested a refund for an item purchased online, but the original payment card has since been lost and replaced. The store manager, under pressure to expedite customer service, suggests processing the refund as a store credit to avoid the administrative complexities of contacting the original card issuer. Option A. Process the refund as store credit immediately to resolve the customer's issue quickly and maintain customer satisfaction. Option B. Escalate the request to the finance or customer service compliance team to determine the correct, compliant procedure for processing refunds when the original payment method is unavailable. Option C. Inform the customer that a refund is not possible without the original payment card and suggest they contact their bank. Option D. Attempt to find a workaround to refund the amount directly to a new card the customer provides, bypassing standard procedures. The correct answer is B. Escalate the request to the finance or customer service compliance team to determine the correct, compliant procedure for processing refunds when the original payment method is unavailable. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an employee to navigate a conflict between a direct request from a superior and established company policy designed to ensure regulatory compliance and customer trust. The pressure to fulfill a request, even if it seems minor or expedient, can lead to overlooking potential risks. Careful judgment is required to balance operational efficiency with adherence to the law and ethical conduct. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to Sainsbury's regulatory framework and internal guidelines. Specifically, it upholds the principle of treating customers fairly and transparently, which is a cornerstone of consumer protection legislation and ethical business conduct. By escalating the issue to the appropriate department, the employee ensures that the situation is handled by individuals with the expertise to assess the regulatory implications and implement a compliant solution, thereby protecting both the customer and the company from potential legal repercussions and reputational damage. This aligns with the duty of care expected of all employees within a regulated environment. An incorrect approach that involves fulfilling the request without question demonstrates a failure to understand or apply Sainsbury's regulatory compliance obligations. This could lead to a breach of data protection laws, e. G. GDPR if applicable in the UK context for customer data, or consumer rights legislation, resulting in fines, legal action, and significant damage to Sainsbury's reputation. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to resolve the issue independently without consulting policy or seeking guidance, risks misinterpreting regulations or implementing a non-compliant solution. This bypasses established control mechanisms and could inadvertently create a precedent for future noncompliance. A third incorrect approach, such as ignoring the request or delaying action, could be seen as dereliction of duty and a failure to uphold the company's commitment to customer service and regulatory standards, potentially leading to customer dissatisfaction and further complications. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core issue and its potential implications. This involves consulting relevant company policies, procedures, and regulatory guidelines. If there is any ambiguity or a perceived conflict with these standards, the next step is to seek clarification or escalate the matter to the appropriate authority or department, e.g., legal, compliance, or a designated manager. This ensures that decisions are informed, compliant, and aligned with the organization's ethical and legal responsibilities. Question 13. The monitoring system demonstrates an unusual pattern of customer transaction data, deviating from established norms but not triggering any preset critical alerts. This deviation is subtle, and its immediate business impact is unclear. Option A. Log the anomaly for future review during the next scheduled risk assessment cycle, assuming it is a minor fluctuation. Option B. Initiate a detailed review of the transaction data, cross-referencing with recent operational changes and known fraud indicators, to understand the root cause and potential implications before escalating. Option C. Contact the IT department to disable the monitoring system temporarily, as it appears to be generating false positives. Option D. Immediately halt all transactions associated with the observed pattern to prevent any potential loss, regardless of the clarity of the threat. Correct answer is B. Initiate a detailed review of the transaction data, cross-referencing with recent operational changes and known fraud indicators, to understand the root cause and potential implications before escalating. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to interpret complex data from a monitoring system and make a judgment call on the severity of a potential risk without explicit, predefined thresholds for every eventuality. The challenge lies in balancing proactive risk mitigation with the potential for overreaction or underestimation of a threat. Careful judgment is required to ensure that resources are allocated effectively and that the business is adequately protected without causing undue disruption. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic and evidence-based evaluation of the observed anomaly. By cross-referencing the system's output with known operational procedures and potential impact, it allows for a nuanced understanding of the risk. This aligns with the principles of good governance and risk management, which emphasize informed decision-making based on a comprehensive assessment of the situation. It also reflects a commitment to understanding the root cause of the anomaly, which is crucial for preventing recurrence and improving the monitoring system itself. This proactive and analytical stance is ethically sound, as it prioritizes the integrity and security of the business operations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate, drastic action without understanding the context or potential impact would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to unnecessary disruption, wasted resources, and a lack of confidence in the monitoring system. Such an approach fails to demonstrate due diligence and a considered risk assessment, potentially violating ethical obligations to act responsibly and efficiently. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the anomaly due to its perceived infrequency or lack of immediate catastrophic indicators, would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This demonstrates a disregard for potential vulnerabilities and a failure to uphold the duty of care to protect the business and its stakeholders from foreseeable risks. It could lead to significant financial or reputational damage if the anomaly escalates. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, understand the observed data and its immediate implications. Second, gather contextual information and compare it against established policies, procedures, and risk appetite. Third, assess the potential impact and likelihood of the risk escalating. Fourth, determine the most appropriate course of action, which may range from further investigation to immediate intervention. And finally, document the decision-making process and the rationale behind it for future review and learning. Question 14. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential data privacy concern when a customer service representative is asked by a customer to access their personal purchase history to verify a disputed transaction, but the representative does not have direct access to this level of detail. What is the most appropriate course of action for the customer service representative in this situation? Option A. Attempt to access the customer's purchase history through unofficial or less secure channels to quickly resolve the dispute and satisfy the customer. Option B. Provide the customer with general information about typical transaction verification processes without accessing their specific data, hoping it addresses their concern. Option C. Politely inform the customer that their request cannot be fulfilled due to data privacy restrictions, and offer to escalate the issue to a supervisor or a specialized team who can assist with verifying the transaction securely. Option D. Advise the customer to wait for a significant period until a manager is available to handle the request, without offering any interim solution. The correct answer is C. Politely inform the customer that their request cannot be fulfilled due to data privacy restrictions, and offer to escalate the issue to a supervisor or a specialized team who can assist with verifying the transaction securely. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the imperative to protect customer data and comply with regulatory obligations. The pressure to resolve a customer complaint quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise data privacy. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data protection and regulatory compliance while still aiming to resolve the customer's issue. By escalating the request to a specialist team with the appropriate access and training, the company ensures that customer data is handled securely and in accordance with the Sainsbury's hiring assessment tests regulatory framework, which likely emphasizes data privacy principles such as GDPR, if applicable to the exam's jurisdiction, or similar data protection legislation. This approach demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and customer trust. An incorrect approach that involves directly accessing customer data without proper authorization or a legitimate business need would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to breaches of data privacy laws, resulting in substantial fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer confidence. Another incorrect approach, such as providing generic, unverified information to the customer without confirming the details, risks misinforming the customer and failing to resolve their actual issue, potentially leading to further complaints and undermining the company's service standards. A third incorrect approach, such as ignoring the request or delaying a response indefinitely, also fails to meet service-level agreements and regulatory expectations for customer care and complaint resolution. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core issue and the information required to resolve it. They must then assess the regulatory and ethical implications of accessing and handling any personal data involved. If direct access is not permissible or appropriate, the next step is to identify the correct internal channels or colleagues who have the authority and training to access the necessary information securely. This process emphasizes a proactive, compliant, and customer-centric approach to problem solving. Question 15. During the evaluation of a proposed significant change to the in-store product sourcing and delivery logistics, which approach to conducting the impact assessment would best ensure compliance with UK regulatory frameworks and ethical business practices? Option A. Conducting a comprehensive assessment that includes detailed analysis of potential impacts on employee roles and working conditions, customer access and product availability, supply chain relationships, and environmental considerations with proactive stakeholder engagement. Option B. Relying on historical data from similar but not identical retail sectors to predict the impact without specific consultation for the current operational context. Option C. Prioritizing a detailed financial analysis of cost savings and efficiency gains with a secondary review of potential customer inconvenience. Option D. Focusing primarily on the immediate operational benefits and assuming that any negative consequences will be minor and self-correcting. The correct answer is C. Prioritizing a detailed financial analysis of cost savings and efficiency gains with a secondary review of potential customer inconvenience. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for cost savings with the long-term implications of a significant operational change. Sainsbury, as a major retailer, has a responsibility to its customers, employees, and stakeholders to ensure that any impact assessment is thorough, transparent, and compliant with relevant UK regulations, particularly those concerning consumer protection and employment law. The challenge lies in accurately predicting and mitigating potential negative consequences across various domains. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it adopts a comprehensive and proactive methodology. By engaging with all relevant stakeholders, including employees, customer groups, and regulatory bodies, Sainsbury can gather diverse perspectives and identify potential risks that might otherwise be overlooked. This inclusive process ensures that the impact assessment is not only technically sound, but also ethically defensible, aligning with principles of corporate social responsibility and good governance. Furthermore, a thorough assessment allows for the development of robust mitigation strategies, demonstrating a commitment to minimizing harm and maximizing benefits, which is a cornerstone of responsible business operations under UK law. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on financial projections without considering the human element would fail to comply with employment law, which mandates consultation and consideration of employee welfare during significant operational changes. This could lead to legal challenges and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that neglects to assess the impact on customer accessibility or product availability would contravene consumer protection regulations, which aim to ensure fair trading and adequate service provision. Failing to consult with relevant industry bodies or regulatory authorities, such as the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, if financial services are involved, or the Health and Safety Executive, HSE, for operational changes, would represent a significant regulatory failure and a breach of due diligence. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, multidisciplinary approach. This begins with clearly defining the scope of the proposed change and its potential impact areas. Subsequently, a thorough risk identification and analysis phase should be undertaken, drawing on internal expertise and external consultation. This should be followed by the development of a detailed mitigation plan, including contingency measures. Finally, ongoing monitoring and review are crucial to ensure the effectiveness of the implemented strategies and to adapt to unforeseen consequences, all within the framework of UK legal and ethical standards. Question 16. Governance review demonstrates that the current in-store stock management process is inefficient, leading to potential stockouts and increased waste. A proposal has been put forward to implement a new automated inventory tracking system. However, the implementation team is primarily focused on cost saving through reduced manual labor and faster stock updates, with minimal consideration for the impact on customer availability of popular items or the potential for data errors in the new system. Which of the following approaches best addresses the challenge of process optimization while adhering to Sainsbury operational and regulatory responsibilities? Option A. Immediately proceed with the new system, assuming that any initial disruptions will be temporary and that the long-term benefits will outweigh short-term customer complaints. Option B. Prioritize the implementation of the new automated system, focusing on the projected cost savings and efficiency gains, with a plan to address any customer-facing issues or data inaccuracies as they arise post-launch. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive pilot program in a select number of stores, involving customer service staff and stock management teams to gather feedback on usability, accuracy, and customer impact before a full rollout. Option D. Focus solely on optimizing the existing manual stock management process to avoid the costs and complexities associated with implementing a new technological solution. The correct answer is B. Prioritize the implementation of the new automated system, focusing on the projected cost savings and efficiency gains, with a plan to address any customer-facing issues or data inaccuracies as they arise post-launch. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing efficiency gains with the potential impact on customer experience and regulatory compliance. Sainsbury, as a large retailer, operates under strict UK regulations concerning food safety, product quality, and customer service standards. Process optimization, while beneficial for cost reduction and operational efficiency, must not compromise these fundamental obligations. The The challenge lies in identifying optimization strategies that enhance internal processes without negatively affecting the end-user experience or breaching any legal or ethical requirements. Correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic review that considers all stakeholders and potential impacts. By involving cross-functional teams, including those directly interacting with customers and those responsible for compliance, Sainsbury ensures that optimization efforts are well-rounded. This collaborative method allows for the identification of potential risks and the development of mitigation strategies before implementation. Adhering to UK consumer protection laws, food safety regulations, e.g., Food Safety Act 1990, relevant EU retained law, and the principles of good corporate citizenship is paramount. This approach ensures that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of customer trust or legal standing. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reducing staffing levels in customer-facing roles without a thorough impact assessment would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to longer wait times, reduced service quality, and potentially breaches of customer service expectations, which could indirectly impact compliance with consumer rights legislation. Another incorrect approach, such as automating inventory management without ensuring data accuracy and traceability, could lead to stock discrepancies, product recalls, or even food safety issues, violating stringent food safety regulations. A third incorrect approach, implementing new technology without adequate staff training, risks operational errors and customer dissatisfaction, potentially contravening data protection regulations if customer data is mishandled. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with clearly defining the objectives of the process optimization. Next, identify all potential impacts, both positive and negative, on customers, employees, suppliers, and regulatory compliance. Evaluate the likelihood and severity of these impacts. Develop and prioritize mitigation strategies for identified risks. Crucially, consult with relevant internal departments, e.g., legal, compliance, operations, customer service, and where necessary, external experts. Pilot testing and phased implementation allow for real-time adjustments. Continuous monitoring and feedback loops are essential to ensure ongoing effectiveness and compliance. Question 17. The audit findings indicate a critical system failure impacting customer order processing. A temporary workaround has been identified that could restore functionality within hours, but it involves temporarily bypassing certain data validation checks that are designed to protect personal customer information. The IT team is pushing for immediate implementation to minimize business disruption. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Engage the Data Protection Officer, DPO, and relevant compliance teams to assess the risks associated with the temporary workaround, explore alternative solutions, and document the decision-making process before proceeding. Option B. Halt all system operations until a permanent, fully compliant solution can be developed and tested, even if it means extended downtime. Option C. Proceed with the temporary workaround, assuming that the risk to personal data is minimal given the short duration of the bypass. Option D. Immediately implement the temporary workaround to restore service and address the data validation bypass in a subsequent, planned update. The correct answer is D. Immediately implement the temporary workaround to restore service and address the data validation bypass in a subsequent, planned update. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term ethical and regulatory compliance. The pressure to resolve a critical system failure quickly can lead to shortcuts that might compromise data integrity or customer privacy, both of which are paramount under UK data protection laws, specifically the Data Protection Act 2018, DPA 2018, and the UK GDPR. The need for a decision-making framework is evident to ensure that the chosen solution is not only effective, but also legally sound and ethically responsible. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, documented, and compliant resolution. By involving the Data Protection Officer, DPO, and adhering to established incident response protocols, the company demonstrates a commitment to data privacy and regulatory adherence. This proactive engagement ensures that any solution implemented is assessed for its impact on personal data, minimizing the risk of breaches and associated penalties. It aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, as mandated by Article 25 of the UK GDPR, which requires controllers to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure data protection. An incorrect approach that involves immediately implementing a quick fix without proper assessment would fail to uphold the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation. This could lead to the unnecessary processing or retention of personal data, violating Article 5 of the UK GDPR. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the data privacy implications to expedite the fix, would be a direct contravention of the DPA 2018 and the UK GDPR, potentially leading to significant fines and reputational damage. Furthermore, failing to document the incident and the chosen resolution would hinder future audits and demonstrate a lack of accountability, which is a core requirement for compliance. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that includes 1. Identifying the problem and its potential impact, 2. Consulting relevant policies and regulations, in this case, DPA 2018 and UK GDPR, 3. Seeking expert advice, e.g., from the DPO, 4. Evaluating potential solutions against compliance requirements and ethical considerations, 5. Documenting the decision-making process and the chosen solution, and 6. Implementing and monitoring the solution. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and compliant. Question 18. Regulatory review indicates that a new supplier has been onboarded for a key product line. During a routine stock check, a team member notices a slight discrepancy in the packaging of a small batch of this product compared to previous deliveries. What is the most appropriate initial risk assessment approach? Option A. Document the discrepancy, compare it against the supplier's specifications and quality control records, and monitor future deliveries for recurrence. Option B. Assume the discrepancy is a minor cosmetic issue and instruct staff to ignore it to avoid disrupting sales. Option C. Immediately halt all further deliveries from this supplier and initiate a full product recall. Option D. Report the discrepancy to the supplier's head office and demand an immediate explanation before any further action is taken. The correct answer is C. Immediately halt all further deliveries from this supplier and initiate a full product recall. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the need for proactive risk identification with the practical constraints of a busy retail environment. The challenge lies in discerning which potential risks warrant immediate, in-depth investigation versus those that can be monitored or addressed through standard operating procedures, all while adhering to Sainsbury internal risk management framework and relevant UK regulations. Careful judgment is required to avoid both overreaction and complacency. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes risks based on their potential impact and likelihood, aligning with the principles of effective risk management as outlined in UK guidance and Sainsbury-owned policies. This systematic approach ensures that resources are allocated efficiently to address the most significant threats to the business, its customers, and its employees. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and a proactive stance on safeguarding operations, which is ethically and regulatorily sound. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on minor, isolated incidents without considering their potential systemic implications fails to meet the standards of comprehensive risk assessment. This could lead to a missed opportunity to identify a larger, emerging issue, potentially violating regulatory obligations to maintain a safe and secure environment. Another incorrect approach that involves immediate escalation of every perceived minor deviation, without initial assessment, wastes valuable resources and can create an environment of unnecessary alarm, hindering efficient operations and potentially undermining the credibility of the risk management process. A third incorrect approach that relies purely on historical data without considering current operational changes or emerging trends would be a failure to adapt risk assessment to the dynamic retail landscape, potentially leaving the business vulnerable to new or evolving threats. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the context of the situation, identifying potential risks, assessing their likelihood and impact, and then determining appropriate mitigation strategies. This involves consulting relevant internal policies and external regulatory guidance, prioritizing actions based on the risk assessment, and documenting the process. Continuous monitoring and review are also crucial components of this framework. Question 19. The control framework reveals that a customer has lodged a complaint regarding a product defect. The immediate resolution would be to offer a refund, but the system requires a detailed report of the defect before processing any financial compensation. The employee is under pressure to clear their queue of pending customer issues. Which course of action best upholds the control framework and professional standards? Option A. Advise the customer that the product defect is not covered by policy and close the complaint without further investigation or documentation. Option B. Process the refund immediately and then attempt to fill out the defect report later, prioritizing speed of resolution. Option C. Politely inform the customer that the refund cannot be processed until the defect report is completed and then proceed to accurately document the defect. Option D. Offer a goodwill gesture, such as a discount on a future purchase, without processing a refund or completing the defect report, to quickly close the interaction. The correct answer is B. Process the refund immediately and then attempt to fill out the defect report later, prioritizing speed of resolution. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a Sainsbury employee to balance the immediate need to resolve a customer complaint with the overarching regulatory requirement to maintain accurate and compliant records. The pressure to provide a swift resolution can sometimes lead to shortcuts that compromise data integrity or adherence to internal policies, which are often designed to align with broader regulatory expectations for consumer protection and operational transparency. Careful judgment is required to ensure that customer satisfaction is achieved without violating established procedures or potentially misleading internal reporting. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to Sainsbury established procedures for handling customer complaints and recording outcomes. This aligns with the principle of operational integrity and data accuracy, which are implicitly expected under consumer protection regulations and internal governance frameworks. By following the defined process, the employee ensures that the resolution is documented correctly, allowing for accurate tracking of complaint types, resolution times, and customer satisfaction metrics. This also supports any potential future audits or reviews of customer service performance and compliance. An incorrect approach that involves fabricating details to close the complaint quickly would represent a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This action undermines the integrity of Sainsbury customer feedback system and could lead to misrepresentation of service quality. It violates the ethical duty of honesty and transparency in business dealings. Furthermore, it could contravene regulations related to fair trading and consumer rights, as it prevents accurate identification of systemic issues that might require broader corrective action. Another incorrect approach, such as dismissing the complaint without proper investigation or documentation, would fail to uphold Sainsbury's commitment to customer service and could also have regulatory implications. It suggests a lack of due diligence and could leave the customer feeling unheard and dissatisfied, potentially leading to further escalation or negative publicity. This approach neglects the responsibility to address customer concerns effectively and to maintain a clear audit trail of interactions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, the employee should actively listen to and understand the customer's complaint. Second, they should consult Sainsbury internal policies and procedures for handling such issues. Third, they should assess the available options for resolution, considering both customer satisfaction and procedural compliance. Fourth, they should select the option that best balances these considerations, ensuring that any actions taken are accurately documented according to established guidelines. Finally, they should confirm the resolution with the customer and ensure all necessary follow-up actions are completed. This systematic process ensures that decisions are not only effective in the short term, but also robust from a compliance and ethical standpoint. Question 20. Implementation of a new stock replenishment system in the fresh produce aisle is being considered to improve efficiency. The primary goal is to reduce the time taken from receiving goods to them being available for sale. What is the most effective approach to ensure this implementation is successful and aligns with Sainsbury operational values? Option A. Implement a fully automated system that requires minimal colleague intervention, focusing solely on the speed of the process, and address any issues that arise post-implementation. Option B. Conduct a thorough analysis of the current stock replenishment process, involving feedback from store colleagues who work in fresh produce, and pilot proposed changes to measure impact on availability, accuracy, and colleague workload before full rollout. Option C. Immediately adopt a system used by a competitor that has shown a reported 15% reduction in replenishment time, assuming it will yield similar results for Sainsbury stores. Option D. Rely on a consultant's report that suggests a generic technology solution for faster replenishment without specific consideration of Sainsbury store layouts or existing operational procedures. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough analysis of the current stock replenishment process, involving feedback from store colleagues who work in fresh produce, and pilot proposed changes to measure impact on availability, accuracy, and colleague workload before full rollout. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in retail operations, balancing efficiency gains with potential impacts on customer experience and employee well-being. The professional challenge lies in identifying process improvements that are sustainable, compliant with Sainsbury operational standards, and ethically sound, without solely focusing on cost reduction. Careful judgment is required to ensure that changes do not inadvertently lead to service degradation or increased employee stress, which could negatively affect customer loyalty and staff retention. The correct approach focuses on a holistic review of the current process, involving key stakeholders and considering multiple performance indicators beyond just speed. This represents best professional practice because it aligns with a commitment to continuous improvement that is customer-centric and employee-aware. It acknowledges that true process optimization is not just about reducing time, but also about enhancing quality, reducing errors, and improving the overall experience for both customers and staff. This approach is implicitly supported by Sainsbury, likely internal guidelines on operational excellence and customer service standards, which would prioritize a balanced outcome. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed above all else, without considering the impact on accuracy or customer interaction, fails to meet professional standards. This could lead to increased errors in order fulfillment or a rushed, impersonal customer service experience, directly contradicting Sainsbury likely service commitments. Such an approach might also violate internal policies regarding customer satisfaction and employee workload management, potentially leading to ethical breaches if it results in undue pressure on staff. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on external benchmarks without understanding the specific context of Sainsbury operations is also professionally unsound. While benchmarks can be informative, they do not account for unique store layouts, customer demographics, or existing staff capabilities. Implementing changes based on such a narrow view risks disruption and inefficiency, failing to achieve genuine optimization. This could be seen as a failure of due diligence and a disregard for the practical realities of the business. A third incorrect approach that focuses only on technology adoption without considering the human element in training is also flawed. While technology can be a powerful tool for optimization, its successful implementation requires adequate training and integration into existing workflows. Ignoring these aspects can lead to resistance, errors, and a failure to realize the intended benefits, ultimately hindering rather than helping the process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the current process thoroughly, including its strengths and weaknesses. 2. Identifying clear objectives for optimization, encompassing efficiency, quality, customer satisfaction, and employee well-being. 3. Engaging all relevant stakeholders, including frontline staff, to gather insights and ensure buy-in. 4. Evaluating potential solutions against these objectives, considering both quantitative and qualitative impacts. 5. Piloting changes where feasible to assess their effectiveness before full-scale implementation. 6. Establishing metrics to monitor performance post-implementation and making adjustments as needed.